Well, my name is Claire Coenen, and I'm just really excited to be with you all this afternoon to read poems from my new book, The Beautiful Keeps Breathing, and to be joined with two people and poets who have just really been lights to me this past year on this new adventure of living into life as a poet. Julie Sumner is here, and Julia Fehrenbacher, both Julie and Julia, and I love that I'm apparently really drawn to people with Julie as like Jewel as their root names. But Julie and Julia both really generously offered blurbs for the back of my book and have become good friends and mentors to me this past year. And their writing has really been a source of inspiration for me. And when I asked them kind of last minute to see if they would be willing to read with me, I was thrilled to learn that they would. So we're going to be together for about an hour and a half, and please do whatever you need to do. Don't, if you need to sign off early, do whatever is best for you. But we kind of wanted to structure this time so that you're hearing poems from The Beautiful Keeps Breathing, and Kelsay Books is hosting this reading. Olivia's with Kelsay Books, and that's the publisher of The Beautiful Keeps Breathing. So I'll be reading poems from my book, and Julie and Julia will both be reading throughout, and we're sort of going to journey through the arc of The Beautiful Keeps Breathing thematically. And the first part of our reading will be poems that are related to the content of the first part of my book, which is Inhale. And then we'll be moving into the second part of the reading, which will be related to the content of the section in my book, Hold. And then for the third part of the reading, we'll be reading poems related to themes in the last part of my book, Exhale. So yeah, this is a pretty informal gathering, and I really hope very much, my intention for this time together is that this can just be a refuge, and in the midst of all of the roller coasters and the news, that you can just kind of receive and soak in some poetry this afternoon. If you do have any comments or questions, you're welcome to add them to the chat. This will primarily just be us reading, then sort of a back and forth. But if something connects with you from a poem, or if there's anything you would like to say, feel free to use the chat function. So just a little bit more about Julie Sumner and Julia Fehrenbacher. Julie Sumner is a poet here in Nashville, Tennessee. I'm also I live in Nashville, and Julie is the author of a beautiful book called Meridian. And it's underneath my sheet of paper. So it's a really stunning book. It actually was selected for a prize. I'm trying to remember the exact details. Julie, do you mind chiming in here? The name of the prize?
It was the Wild House Poetry Prize. Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
And who chose this? Who was the judge of this prize?
Jane Hirschfield.
So Jane Hirschfield, who I imagine many of you know, selected Julie's book as the winner of this prize. And I really recommend this book. It's been very meaningful to me. And Julie teaches writing here in Nashville. She formerly worked as a nurse, and her her wisdom and her lived experience is very much alive in her work. So I'm thrilled to have her reading here. And then Julia Fehrenbacher is the author of the beautiful book, Stay in Love. And I connected with Julia Fehrenbacher through her writing community called Write Yourself Free. And I will just say during a season when I was having some health issues and just stress was really sort of piling up, this community was such a soft place to land and a gift. And Julia is a really wonderful facilitator. So with that being said, let's move into some poetry. And for the first kind of section of our reading, Julie, and I will be reading poems that are connected, generally speaking, and all of these poems are related to the broader theme of beauty. But for this first section, the poems will center on themes of home, kind of delight, beginnings, where we're from. And yeah, Julia, will you kick us off?
Absolutely. Thank you, Claire. It's so good to be here and see familiar faces. Hello, everybody. Just inviting you to kind of remember that you have a body right now. Drop into the body, drop into the breath. I just think it's so important that we kind of all forget the world for a little while and just enter this beautiful space of poetry. So just inviting some deep breaths before I begin. I'm just so grateful to be here. Thank you, everybody. I'm going to start us out with a newish poem of mine. This is not yet published anywhere. It's called The Only Thing That Makes Sense. And I decided with the state of the world that this really is all that makes sense to me, is that we kind of embody the kindest, best, most loving version of ourselves. We need it more than ever. I think we all are aware of that. So this is called The Only Thing That Makes Sense. The only thing that makes sense is to hold it all tenderly, as if it can break, as if it won't be here forever, as if the moment that is this moment will give you everything if you let it. The only thing that makes sense is to celebrate the exactness of you, to take your own face in your own hands and declare yourself worthy, to wrap arms around the orphaned parts that didn't fit, didn't follow, refuse to march in straight little lines. The only thing that makes sense is to make art that is your art that swings, sways, tangos its way through every midnight, as if life, this very exact disappearing life, depends on it. To scatter kindness confetti until walls become wings, until hard melts to soft. Not enough becomes a feast of fabulous plenty. A wild belly laughing celebration where every tender, breakable thing is invited to the moment that is this moment, the moment that will give you everything if you let it. Yeah, this coming back to the moment is an absolute constant practice. one breath at a time, come back, come back, come back. That's my practice. And I can go whole days with forgetting that practice, but that's the intention. Coming back to the moment where really it's the only thing that's ever real, right? And it's where sanity lives and worthiness lives and abundance lives and gratitude lives. So I'll go ahead and read another one, and then I'm going to turn it over to one of these other lovely poets. This one is a poem from my book, Staying in Love, that Claire mentioned, and it's called The Most Important Thing. I am making a home inside myself, a shelter of kindness where everything is forgiven, everything allowed. A quiet patch of sunlight to stretch out without hurry, where all that has been banished and buried is welcomed, spoken, listened to, released. A fiercely friendly place I can claim as my very own. I am throwing arms open to the whole of myself, especially the fearful, fault finding, falling apart, unfinished parts, knowing every seed and weed, every drop of rain has made the soil richer. I will light a candle, pour a hot cup of tea, gather around the warmth of my own blazing fire. I will howl if I want to, knowing every flame can burn through any perceived problem, any prescribed perfectionism, any lying limitation, every heavy thing. I am making a home inside myself where grace blooms and grand and glorious, a shelter of kindness that grows all the truest things. I whisper, hallelujah, to the friendly sky. Watch now as I burst into blossom. Thank you. Thank you all.
Thank you so much, Julia. As I've told you before, the most important thing is one of my most important poems. Honestly, I found that poem, I think, through one of James Cruz's collection. I certainly discovered your work in one of his collections, and I think it was that poem. And James Cruz, if you're not familiar with him and his work, he's just a real poetry light in the world. And I've been very fortunate to have connected with him actually through a dear friend, Karen Kassinger, who's here. Karen, maybe give a little wave. uh, so yeah, one of the surprising gifts of really leaning into this life as a writer is just the human connections, and to connect with James, to connect with Julia through poetry, and then also to connect with Julie too, have just kind of been like the gifts I didn't expect. And I am just sort of soaking in the gratitude of those gifts. So continuing on the theme of home, I'm going to read a poem from the first section of The Beautiful Keeps Breathing that is called The Way Home. The Way Home. When I am seasick, the child inside trembles, terrified of what hides beneath the blanket of sea. The child in me longs to spread her toes in the sand, nestle against the skin of her mother. Breathe the earthy scent beneath palm trees. Squeeze the wrinkled hand for dear life. Now I live in the salt, the blue, the mystery, the endlessness of sea expanding. I am lost and wanting, waiting, watching as clouds create rain and rain creates ocean. I see the drama of water around me, the storms of fear and yearning rise and fall like wind, like waves. Now I sense my mother within, her full moon eyes alive in mine, the light of her voice shining in my mind, bright as sun untouched by fog. I know my heart, like the world, will heal and break, heal and break. All the while, I gaze at ocean stars and float on this blanket of blue. So that's a poem that I actually initially started writing during COVID. And I was feeling really uncertain of when I would see my mom, who's here, also with my dad. Um, but very much in that very, heightened state that I think most of us were in this quarantine season that was so unfamiliar. Um, and this is a poem that I kept playing with over a couple of years, and it ended up being really meaningful to me as I was learning more about sort of symbolism of the divine feminine. I learned that the ocean is, an ancient symbol of this deep feminine wisdom. And so this poem that started very much focused on my personal mom kind of over time became still connected to her and connected more broadly and deeply to this deep feminine source of wisdom. So, one of the gifts of poetry, and I think writing and reading poetry, is just sort of being open to the way a poem can change you, or a poem can sort of draw you from one starting place into a new, maybe surprising, different place. So the next poem I want to read is the very first poem in the book, which is titled More Beautiful. And yeah, hopefully this poem will allow you all to kind of join me on my front porch. More beautiful. Look how the morning dove bathes in the bowl of water. Her underbelly cradled by gathered rain, her bird body unashamed of its plumpness. See the dogwood flaunting rose quartz blooms, soon green leaves, then ruby, fearlessly undressed by December. Today, the blue irises shine. The lungs of the oak shake the sky, receiving and giving to your heart. The roots, in hiding under grass, sprawl at home in the dark, inhaling this morning with you on the porch swing. I ask, how does the acorn break like an egg, live a life more beautiful than it can imagine? So that is an American sonnet, a 14 line poem that doesn't have any of the traditional sonnet rhythm, but yeah, I spent a lot of time on my porch swing with my fiance, Davey, who's here, who is uh just kind of a partner in crime and enjoying life life on the porch and just taking in the often very subtle gifts that are everywhere. And Davey has been an extremely helpful and just essential companion in bringing all of these poems to life. So shout out to Davey. The next poem I want to read is actually a poem dedicated to my three fabulous nieces and my also fabulous nephew. And I don't think Alice, she made an appearance earlier, but Alice is my oldest niece. And in all genuineness, um, Alice and my other nieces and nephew really have been kind of incredible teachers to me. I think one of the biggest perks of being a grown-up that I didn't expect is getting to be an aunt and, having none of the like stressful stuff of having kids and getting to just see the energy, aliveness, imagination, wildness, playfulness that my nieces and nephew bring into the world and into my life. So this poem is very much inspired by them and for them. Wake up, angel child, for my nieces and nephew, Alice, Lola, Cora, and Connor. The sun glows through the window, and the bluebird eats her breakfast. So wipe the stardust from your eyes and flaunt your flower halo. Soar out the door to summer wild outside the rigid fences. Flop on the belly of the grass, curl up with clover pixies. Listen to their whispers, the secrets in the green. Trust the skylight of your mind, clear with clouds of cream. Ask the field your questions, essential as the trees. Shake your flower limbs and hips, belt your rosy dream. You, my dear, reflect the spark on the monarch's wing, the mischief of the western wind, the dewdrops, symmetry. Sip the honeysuckle air and exhale golden giggles. Tickle the dirt with your toes, chase the toads and lizards. And when rest pulls you back to bed with your starry wish, touch the quiet beat of peace soft inside your skin. Wrapped in quilts of nighttime prayer, your body breathing dark, the mystery beams of kindness seep deep into your heart. As you sleep, the stillness hums the hush of lullabies until the sun and bluebird call you again to fly. So that was a really fun one to write. I just kind of let my own imagination play and run wild. And I do feel very strongly that we as adults are really good about using our imaginations in ways that make our lives more full of struggle, catastrophizing, ruminating, just all sorts of possibilities can bubble up in our minds that are imagined, and they're not usually great. Meanwhile, kids use their imagination in ways that are so expansive and connecting and life-giving. And I really feel that one of the great things I've learned from my nieces and nephew is that I can be intentional about trying to use this function of imagination that I have as part of being a human in ways that are more fun and more meaningful. So I'd like to read one more poem from this section of the book, and then pass the torch to Julie. And this poem is called Song Poured Out. And this is a poem that I wrote about Maya Angelou, who is really one of my personal heroes, someone who I've just found enormous inspiration, and not only as a poet, but just as a human. And I was really moved when I learned years ago, and I can't even remember if where I kind of made this connection, and it may be in her book, I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings. But, you know, Maya Angelou was a child who experienced extraordinary trauma. And there was a season of her life in childhood where she was not speaking. And she connected with this woman named Mrs. Flowers, and Mrs. Flowers began giving Maya books, and Maya started reading, and the reading led to her finding her own voice. And of course, you know, we all know Maya Angelou as really a literary lantern in our world. So this poem is very much inspired by her essence, her light. And the name of the poem is Song Poured Out, and it begins with an epigraph from Maya Angelou's poem, Touched by an Angel. In the flush of love's light, we dare be brave. When Mrs. Flowers poured out a tale of two cities and cold lemonade for little Maya that summer afternoon, she watered the miracle of rose seed, coaxed the phenomenal out of silent minerals, beckoned the beautiful from the dust of abuse. She rooted the soul of girl in the soil of courage, tended the fledgling spirit destined to rise and soar on tawny wings of words, called to wrap the clouds with bows of color, to clear the smog with angel air, to quench parched souls with her voice and verses, to free the melody of golden life intrinsic in you and me. Miss Angelou, you poured out on my starless night a startling, sun-drenched song. All right, I'm going to pass the mic metaphorically to Julie.
Thank you so much, Claire. And it's just such a delight to be here with you and hear you reading your poems and be with Julia. And all the wonderful people that have joined us this afternoon. So when Claire asked me to think about poems from childhood for this first part, the first one that came to mind was one that I wrote actually about 2 years ago with my friend Nita, who's here today, Nita Andrews. And I didn't plan on it, but it makes me so happy. It reminds me of childhood growing up in Birmingham, Alabama. And the only thing you might be unfamiliar with is the folk remedy of putting wet tobacco on a bee sting to take out the poison, is what they would say. But it does make it feel better. So that comes up in the poem in case you hear that. This poem is called Birmingham, Summer, 1979. Mimosa, white oak, hickory, sweet gum, and every kind of green under the sun. The sun, the heat so thick we wore it without shoes, better to feel the cool of St. Augustine grass on our calloused soles. Evenings, the dark loitered. Day lasted until the fireflies blinked on and the backyard became a galaxy. Then came the mulish thrum of a box fan in the nighttime hallway, the gathering of leathery neighbors at a listing but still blue pool, hidden in a hollow below I-65, and Mr. Whitehead with his Winstons, always ready to soothe the bee sting with wet tobacco, a gesture as practical and kind as teaching a child which type of leaves grace poison ivy, or which things to take with you and what to leave behind. And the next poem I'd like to read for you, I wrote for a friend of mine, Embryo Adoption. Where was your soul, love? Those years that you were held, embryonic yet whole, the overflow of a generous pair of others, waiting icebound and unknown? Did it hover near the ceiling like a breath suspended in the cold, or swing and swirl in the lab's blue light like a feather caught and windblown? Now here you are, blue-eyed and blinking, chirping and gurgling, a raspberry stuck on your thumb like a cap. You find the berry, find your thumb, find delight as the berry tumbles into your baby bird mouth. Your soul, love, is held within you now, even as I hold you on my lap. And the final poem I'd like to read for you, this is the first one in my book, Meridian. And I wrote it years ago and I still like it. So I guess that means I should stick with it. It's titled The Hum, and it's based on this phenomenon, a town in Washington, everybody was hearing this mysterious hum. They never could figure out what caused it. That's the inspiration for this poem. Hum. You can only hear it in silence, a low rumble, barely perceptible. You may initially attribute it to the refrigerator, later a diesel truck thrumming down the monochrome highway. Then you think it's a seaplane buzzing down in the bay. It is none of these. You turn your head, it's gone. You hold your breath, it's gone. You soon suspect the earth itself, whispering its urgent secrets to anyone who will listen. This is the sound of worms turning. This is the sound of spider webs unspooling. This is the sound of gravity folding and refolding the ocean like a garment. Thank you.
Gosh, that language, folding and refolding the ocean like a garment. Beautiful. So we've inhaled, kind of taken in the world around us, and I wanted to share a little bit more context about the structure of the book, The Beautiful Keeps Breathing, and the kind of idea for this reading of reading sort of in thematic clusters. I came across a quote many years ago through my experience in the yoga world. And this quote is attributed to Krishnamacharya, who's considered the father of modern yoga. And I'll read the quote to you, and then we'll move into our hold section. So this is the epigraph, the first quotation in my book that sort of sets the scene for kind of what unfolds later in the book. So the quotation is, inhale and God approaches you. Hold the inhalation and God remains with you. exhale and you approach God. So actually, there's a fourth line in this quote, which is not in the epigraph of my book. And just as like a spoiler alert, or if you look up the quote, you'll see this. It's hold the exhalation and surrender to God. So I sort of joked with someone at some point. I'm like, I feel like the rest of my life is going to be trying to live out that fourth line of the quote. Surrender is a challenging, ongoing practice. But I did find these connections to breath and kind of the spiritual path to be really compelling and interesting to me. And, God, of course, is a word that has so many connotations, and we bring a lot of our past stories to that word, and can mean many different things to different people. And, I think for me, I was finding that one way for me to connect with what is sacred in life is through beauty. And I was fortunate to grow up in the midst of so much beauty, and that's a lot of what the first part of the book, Inhale, is trying to capture. And then life is not all beautiful, and the second part of the book is really focused on experiences of encountering the chaos, the dissonance, the loss, pain, violence that is very much a real part of life. And we can know it on deeply personal levels. We can know it collectively. So for this kind of next section of our reading, I'm going to start off with the first poem in this section. And I very much wrote this poem with the intention of almost imagining this poem being on a little Post-it note that someone could just come across or keep near during the seasons of life, whether they're personal or whether they're, a whole country or a whole world in wilderness seasons to stay connected to. A note for you in the wilderness. I promise this forest will not entangle you forever. Like sun rays trickling through the branches, illumination will arrive. The painful terrain will soften beneath your feet as your soul learns the secrets of suffering and love. Lanterns and cairns will emerge on the trail, and voices of other travelers will break open the void. In time, your vision will refine to see piles of mud and moss as the homes of fairies who cherish your choice in risking laughter. With intuition, you will sense the dandelions delighting in your wishes and the magnolias billowing wisdom in the blossom air you breathe. Until you inhale this peace, trust that no human is ever green. The little deaths, the traps, the broken hopes in these woods force you to the soul depths most choose to avoid. Yet in the deep and dark, the angels will keep you, attend to your wounds, and teach you to root, to reach, and to shine your only you fragrance. So, yeah, in these wilderness seasons, I find it increasingly important to prioritize the the staying awake to the voices of other travelers, and to finding wisdom and connection in nature, and to tending to our spiritual lives, whatever that looks like for us. The next poem I want to read is later on in the section of Hold. And this is a poem called Beyond Thoughts and Prayers. And this is a poem that I wrote in response. It was several months after the fact, but it was an important way for me to process just a really difficult season in Nashville. There was a school shooting in Nashville in March of 2023. And this is a poem that I wrote in response to that still feels very pertinent in light of our political climate. It is called Beyond Thoughts and Prayers. When state leaders legislate hate, hail firearms, fail our children, forge me into practiced faith. When strangers spray paint my neighborhood with swastikas and slurs at night, and fear pumps through my veins and wears down my mind, wake me into walking courage. When assault rifles ravage the third grade class at the school down the street, and my body shakes with adrenaline and tears, and my heart aches when I hear the politicians only offer their thoughts and prayers, break me into shards of grace, ignite me into acts of love. So poetry can cover such a vast land of experience, and that was a poem that felt really important to write, and I think that, poetry and beauty can sometimes seem like these, how are these things relevant when they're much more pressing issues in our time. And yet, words have power. And I find that if we can lean into the power of words in ways that can help fuel us with courage and love, then even if it's just in a very small way, it can help move the needle toward a world maybe with a little less violence. This next poem is a poem I wrote in memory of a very dear friend, and this poem is called Perennial and is in memory of Eve Marie Carson, who lost her life to a violent crime. And so again, this section is very much connected to both on a societal level, and personally, knowing someone whose life was ended because of a violent act. And it's important for me to be able to stay very much connected to the beauty and love that is still alive for me, even though my friend Eve died in 2008. So this poem is called Perennial, in memory of Eve Marie Carson. I bloom with Eve at the coffee shop as she defines existence in 11 syllables, her voice climbing like wild rose vines. Life is excruciatingly beautiful. As adverb pierces wings of adjective, my empath skin sprouts stems with thorns. Blushing buds adorn my chest. Eve is 22, with ephemeral lips, perennial words, and Eden eyes that see me. In the garden of her gaze, the aliveness of her language, my petals glisten, yes. So, yeah, I'm going to read one more poem from this section. And this in many ways is the hardest poem of the book, and we're in this hold section, and this was a poem that felt important for me to write, not in a way of figuring anything out, but in kind of putting language to a deep grief and a deep confusion and anger related to my friend Eve's death. And the final line of this poem is the title of the book. So while this poem is, it has some real heaviness and thorniness in it, we are moving toward hope too. A letter for truth-telling and the mystery of forgiveness. To the men who murdered my friend. It is hard to know where to start, but I suppose it is always best to start with the truth. You must know how you shattered 10,000 dreams when you shot her, blasting the excruciating into the garden, crushing her life to ephemeral dust. You ravaged the world she loved with landmines of anguish. It is strange to address you with the containment of words after years of insanity and tears of fire, all the brokenness breaking into shards I never believed would form into art. Yet here I am, arranging language into bouquets of verses as I watch winged creatures brush the rose bush in my yard, while somewhere in cells several states away, your lungs still breathe the air of this atmosphere we share. You see, in the kindness of time, healing wings wrapped around me with the promise of spring's return all along. While my chest still throbs with sorrow, I see with clarity through the eyes of my soul how suffering catches and spreads like a virus, and the cure must rise like swallowtail butterflies trapped in cocoons, transfigured by the night, then strengthened to delight in the miracle of green. While my mind cannot grasp the formula of forgiveness, I know my peace dies if I cling to my rage, and my heart beats the secret to receive and give love is the way. And so to you, the humans who murdered my friend, I hope your pain unravels you into life's perennial soul. I hope your prisons tremble with the butterfly effect of wonder. I hope you live into the truth you can never kill, even in the excruciating. The beautiful keeps breathing. So we are in the wilderness. Thank you for being in the wilderness here. We're going to move on to Julia sharing some poems. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Claire and Julie. It's just beautiful to hear you, to listen to you. You know, I'm going to start out this section with a poem that I wrote when I was very much in of the darkness. This poem taught me a lot, that I could just begin right where I was. And what it felt like for me was that I was in a place of deep despair over the state of the world, of the state of many things. And this felt like a gentle arm around me and an embrace. So I'm going to go ahead and start this section with a poem called "The Cure for It All." Lofty title, I know. Um, Go gently today. Don't hurry or think about the next thing. Walk with the quiet trees. Can you believe how brave they are? How kind? Model your life after theirs. Blow kisses at yourself in the mirror, especially when you think you've messed up. Forgive yourself for not meeting your unreasonable expectations. Praise fresh air, clean water, good dogs. Spin something from joy. Open a window, even if it is cold outside. Sit. Close your eyes. Breathe. Allow the river of it all to pulse through eyelashes, fingertips, bare toes. Breathe in. Breathe out. Breathe until you feel your bigness, until the sun rises in your veins. Breathe until you stop needing anything to be different. For me, that poem, writing that poem, it was just so deeply healing, and it answers that question, like, why poetry? How can we make space for poetry in the midst of war, in the midst of utter chaos? And I just want to say, like, how can we not? We have to. It's critical. It's a must. Like, we need to bring more kindness, more art, more love, more poetry, um, more presence. And so for me, that poem, "The Cure for It All," it was like, no, come back, come here. This is where the gentleness is. Let's not rush on to the next thing. It's more and more critical that we just stay here in these bodies so that we can meet what the unthinkable with the best of ourselves, not the depleted of ourselves. So this poem for me was just a really deep healing. Thank you. And I'll go ahead next. And this one is called "Let the Leaf Fall." The leaf. Here it is. This is a newer poem. When this living breaks your heart, steals your plans, when you miss the holy of here, thinking, 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 something brighter is over there. When there is no denying how precious, how precarious this aliveness is, let yourself break again and again. Let the cool, almost autumn breeze blow all the way in. Let the fading light, the falling leaf, show you how short it is, this life, how feather fine the line. And then bow, and then blow infinite kisses of kindness to every dying living thing, yourself included, always yourself included. whoever you think you are, whoever you think you are, does not even come close. You are big enough to hold every break, every ache, every dark cloud, every twinkling star, too. Let the leaf fall. Let the leaf fall. Watch now. Watch how life catches you. Watch how life catches you. And I'll go ahead and read one more for this section. It's so hard to pick and choose and decide. It's not one of my better qualities. Very indecisive. We'll do this one though. This one is called How Do You Know It's Time? How do you know it's time? Because the ache of not speaking becomes too much to bear. Because the ache of not speaking becomes too much to bear. Because one breath of this blooming spring day reminds you that seeds need sunlight to bloom. Because finally you see that your own permission is the only permission you need. Your own permission is the only permission you need ever. And that you are the most important one to please. And because the end of another season reminds you that seasons end, that everything ends, and who has time to waste on waiting? Because, my sweet love, don't you see? Don't you see? No one else is coming to save you. How do you know it's time? Because you have wrestled inside your own skin, fumbled around in the dark long enough. Because even the lily that was closed up tight has bloomed, has finally bloomed. Because the pen tells the truth. Because when you arrive all the way here, you just know. Thank you. I will turn that over to, I guess that's you, Julie.
Thank you so much for that, Julia. It was just lovely and clear. For this particular part of the reading and thinking about the depths of life, a lot of that in my poetry comes from my time as a nurse. And a lot of times it's a friend of mine who's a nurse and a poet describes it as the wound of nursing. And it really is kind of that. You never really get over it. So a lot of these poems come from that experience, and also just thinking about the body as a metaphor, not only for our physical sense, but also for our emotions and our spirits as well. So the first poem I'd like to read is a new one. It's called Managing Scar Tissue. It's from working with so many surgical scars, including my own. Managing scar tissue. Just because the skin has mended itself, don't assume the deeper flesh is good as new. Though the new scar gleams pink and shiny as a second chance at love later in life. Like unruly children, scars learn subterfuge early. The body glosses over its mistakes in haste, eager to play after the school of pain. Jumbled new tissue left littered in its wake. So patiently, tenderly, you soothe the scar, smooth its puckered knots like a cowlick, mother it into order each new day, insist it's safe enough, at least in the world of this body, not to be so hard. And this is the title poem from my book, Meridian. And the meridian refers to, in Chinese medicine, a line of energy along the body. Meridian. It's one of those things you can't see or measure, but you know it's there, insisted the Chinese doctor. I knew exactly what he meant. I could say the same thing about love or madness or thoughts of rain. He pointed to a map on the wall. It could have been a map of the New York subway or the circuitry diagram for a microchip, except that all the lines ran over a human form, and the lines ran along points with poems for names, like Little Marsh and Spirit Door and Listening Palace. It makes sense that you are having pain, he said, as he placed the needle into the cool skin on the top of my left foot, then placed another above the fourth toenail of my left foot. This one is called extreme yin, he said, good for headaches and sleeping problems and also for dreams of ghosts. I wondered how he knew that only 2 nights before, my friend who died last spring appeared for a second beautiful and laughing, then vanished again into my dream. And I'll read one more. This is also from the book. And this title of this poem is The Things We Ask. Of all the things she could have asked, for a sip of water, for another pain pill, for a reason why her transplant failed, the yellow woman lying in her bed asked only if I could pray for her. What could I say? The unsayable now passed between us, a newborn absence, a knowledge of her impending end, leaving us both untethered, beyond reason, astronauts forgotten, left behind by their ship. United in this outer space, we began to pray, cold words sparking into flames of despair, of hope, the way a meteor descending ignites in the atmosphere, unearthly light widening the sky for miles. Thank you.
So now we're exhaling. Thank you, Julia and Julia, for your poems and for all the listeners. Going through the wilderness, going through the hold. So for the third section of the book, The Beautiful Keeps Breathing, and our reading today, thematically, we're playing with exploring kind of what it means to live into our spiritual paths, what it means to connect with creativity in ways that are expansive and life-giving, finding our strength and power as humans, as women. And Julie, we'll come back to you. If you can start us off for this section.
All right, we're on the upswing now. We're all going uphill, so that's good. This is a poem I wrote actually in graduate school when I went to Seattle Pacific, which was a wonderful place. And it's called Patron Saint of Lost Things. The patron saint of lost things is Saint Anthony, just so you know. And the only phrase in this poem, which might require some explanation for younger people, is Sing Sing, which is a prison in upstate New York. Patron saint of lost things. Finding some lost thing is a paradise all its own. When that leather wallet, worn smooth as a burro's back, ambles shyly into its old pocket, or when those Manilow tickets pry their way from beneath the fridge like convicts tunneling out of Sing Sing, Or when those car keys rear their serrated heads like zombies emerging from their tomb of last year's tax returns. Or when that plain wedding band rolls in shining and leaps back onto its rightful ring finger, the kingdom of heaven itself seems almost at hand. And the last poem that I'll read for y'all is one of my newer ones. I've been playing around with that unicorn of poetic forms, the prose poem, and working on a series of laments and praises. And this one has the epigraph of one of my favorite Psalms, Psalm 139. So this is praise 13. And the epigraph is Psalm 139, 11 and 12. If I asked darkness to cover me and light to become night around me, that darkness would not be dark to you. Night would be light as day. The light is just like that, isn't it? Getting into everything. See how it army crawls under the bedroom door to crack open your sleep, or how it filters innocent as dew through the closed blinds of your window, or how night after night it rappels down from Sirius, Antares, even Venus and Mars. You can't keep it out, like dog hair or dust or even glitter, the worst. There's just no escaping. You could hurl yourself off the continental shelf and shroud yourself in some benthic layer abyss. But even at the cold bottom of the ocean, constellations of anglerfish and jellyfish would infiltrate your darkness with their own strange zodiac, illuminate your well-chosen hiding space. Look, see how they reveal the details of a world just beyond your face, reveal the details of a world just now coming into being on your own beautiful face. Thank you.
Claire, am I up? Okay. All right. Thank you, Julie. Oh, goodness. Thank you, Claire. Okay. I think I will start with this one. This one's called, this is in actually one of James's anthologies, The Only Way I Know to Love the World. It's in his anthology entitled Wonder of Small Things. That's it. I got it. It is not just a cup of coffee, but the warm hum of hello, an invitation to wake, to sip, to say thank you for another chance to dance with another new day. It's not just a ceramic mug, but the one she shapes with her own 16-year-old hands for me, for me. It's not just one heart held open to another or a kiss blown in the mirror, not just the soft circle of smile, but a nod of, I see you. You are not alone. Not just life, but your life, your very temporary life. It isn't just the earth you stand on, but the giver of every single thing. A reason to get down on humbled human knees and say thank you, thank you, thank you. It's not just another moment, but a door flung open, a flooded with light entrance to every real thing. Not just a poem, but a prayer whispered from one listening ear to another. The only way I know to love the world. Thank you. This one is called Hers to Claim. Shortly after waking to this new day, I hear the words, do not refuse any part of you. Do not numb your knowing. Instead, make a nest of tenderness big enough to hold every page of you, every age of you. especially the small pig-tailed one who ached and aches to be heard. Hear her now. Let her rage if she needs to. Hear her until knowing pours like spring rain, until every budding thing raises its drenched head, until every silenced thing is claimed. Claire, I'm feeling like I want to turn it over to you with this last remaining time here. I think it's all yours. Hmm.
Thanks, Julia.
Thank you.
Oh, I just soaking in all of the wonder and liveness and power of both of your words, Julie and Julia. So the first poem in the section Exhale of The Beautiful Keeps Breathing is called Wild Poetry. And this is a poem that was really fun to write. And I definitely leaned into the rhetorical device, hyperbole. Just disclaimer, I did not get an F literally on an assignment in third grade. I know people have been concerned about this. But no, this is a poem really about the way in which, as kids, we do have this imagination, and then the expectations, the norms, the pressures of the world can not value those attributes. And this is a poem about kind of the loss of that freedom, imagination, and then the reclaiming. Wild poetry. The warthog, elephant, and tawny eagle shared their traits in rhyme and verse for my third grade African animal report. Maybe Miss Buttons hated poetry. She scrawled incorrect formatting in scarlet ink below the unfathomable F. Squeezing back tears, I stuffed my failure to the back of my binder, my imagination to the corner cubby of my brain. And with each passing grade, I learned the right way to format the paper and score the A. The animals stayed locked in their cage, bound to the rubric. I forced 5 paragraphs into essays. I climbed and climbed the ladder of success to win the high score on the standardized test, up the wall of the ivy until the poison of perfection almost ate me alive. Down, down, down I fell into a well of weakness and woe, where I drowned in dreams of rumbling red African sunsets burning my suburban ambitions with the fire of savannah yearnings. In the dark of the depth, I claimed the breath of pain, the pulse of spirit. The incorrect creatures, no longer bound, trampled me with grace. The warthog rolled me with glee in the grime as the elephant blared my initiation song. The third grade girl inside cried ancient rivers while the eagle cooed, stroking my tangles with tawny wings. In the spirals of time, my tears became a solvent for my shame. First clawing, then crawling, then pouncing past boulders of presumptions, pressures, soul paralysis. I rewrote paragraphs of failure into poetry of wildness. Tonight, my creatures howl and prance, unbound beneath the baobab trees, the eternal sky broken open from doming black by starry bodies, fierce and free in verse. That actually is a poem that James Cruz, who had to leave early, but he really encouraged me in writing the ending of that poem to really just let it roar, let it be free. And the first kind of drafts of this poem were a little more tame, but I tried to write into the wildness. The next poem I'd like to read, this is a short poem, and in the book I have 3 different short poems, one in each section, and each one is called Great and Small Prayer. So this is the third Great and Small Prayer. And this poem is dedicated to Karen Cassinger, who is here this afternoon, who has really become an incredible friend to me, and someone who just sort of like fell from the sky a few years ago, and has offered love and encouragement, and also, I mean, this book really wouldn't be if for Karen. She connected me with James, and there was just sort of this thread of kind of domino effects that I really know Karen to be such an initiating force in this adventure. So this poem is called Great and Small Prayer for Karen. Let me be the soil, the song within the seed. April's sigh waking the silent life of leaf. Let me be the dogwood, the glow of firefly, the eagle's eye perceiving the miracle of sky. So Karen has been many of those metaphors to me in the poem, and has inspired me to live into some of the qualities of the language in this poem. So yeah, I'm going to read one, another kind of short poem that's called A Recipe for Mercy. And if you're ever looking for a fun writing prompt, it can be really enjoyable to write recipe poems, and you can do this for anything. A Recipe for Mercy. Hold the darkness in your hands. Break the blocks of bitterness into tiny pieces. Pour it all into the saucepan. Add milk and sugar. Let it boil. Whisk slowly. Lower the heat. Breathe in and out as the hardness of the heart melts into cocoa. So, yeah, I'll read 2 more poems for you. The second to last poem in this book is called The Course of Love. And this poem, like other poems in the book, are very much composite experiences that are within one poem. So a book of poetry is not a memoir, and yet, of course, at least for me, I can say my own life and lived experience are very much a part of the poetry I'm writing. And I'm not trying to capture the facts of particular events, but rather the internal experiences of that I've lived, and also, as humans, we're interconnected to each other. And I worked for a few years as a therapist, and in that work, I was very present to people's experiences, not only of deep grief and loss, but also of kind of having these realizations and connecting with themselves in these powerful ways. And this poem speaks to kind of that experience of being in the midst of the grief and loss that is part of life, and also sort of having these um, moments of deeper connection and knowing. And the poem begins with an epigraph. These are the words of the late Representative John Lewis, who's also one of my real heroes. And I think particularly in this moment of our history, he is someone we can all look to as a guide. He writes, "Anchor the eternity of love in your own soul and embed this planet with goodness. Lean toward the whispers of your own heart, discover the universal truth, and follow its dictates." Driving to the funeral today, I lighten for the first time all morning when I turn right and read the green street sign, John Lewis Freedom Parkway. I feel my grip relax on the wheel as I wonder how the good troublemaker found strength in this crazy world. Call me insane, but as I change lanes, I start to talk to the spirit of this human who inspired me. Defying logic, I believe he will hear me, and I say in a whisper, "I feel small. I wish I were braver." Yes, here I am in my Prius, alone and snow white with slave owning ancestors, confiding in the late Black saint who embedded this planet with goodness, with peace. Above the hum of the heat blowing on my feet, I sense Mr. Lewis saying, "Courage, soul force, it's always within you." Pulling into the church parking lot, I ask my hero to stay near me as I give the eulogy. I don't know why, but I know he says, "I will." After all the classes in psychology and theology, I am walking toward a ritual for death when I realize the course of love requires vast imagination. The course of love requires surrendering to the mystery. The course of love requires filling my body with the force of soul. Alone, but not alone, I sense the power of peace pulsing in the soles of my feet, rising up my legs, gathering in the core of my being as I take the next step forward. Holding my head high, trusting the light inside, I open the door to the sanctuary. And then I'll end with a poem that's kind of boldly titled A Secret of Life, but not to be confused with The Secret of Life, just a secret. This is when, the minutia of language can be fun. So thank you all so much for being here. I really, really appreciate it. It's a gift to share this with others. A Secret of Life. When I crack open the door beyond my ruminations, I find starry bouquets of color, crimson, apricot, and yellow at the threshold. Dahlias wrapped in silk ribbon wait for me on the porch. couch. Their petals long to touch my face, to widen my eyes, so I may see the waves of pulsing light, alive and fragrant like love, yearning to share her secrets. I breathe in tenderness of flower bodies, cherish the blossoming air in my chest. I breathe out from brightening lungs, a soul soothed by the scent of earth, a heart encouraged to bloom at night. So thank you for taking this very long breath with us. It's been a real pleasure to be with you all. And I do hope you'll stay connected through poetry. I will put my email and website in the chat. And yeah, I hope you have a wonderful rest of your afternoon.